Well, hey, everybody. I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend, Emily. Emily, welcome to BecomingMeTV. And a little backstory for you guys. So Emily and I have been working on sharing her story for a couple years, and I've been so excited for us to film. Like, literally before we push record, I was just dancing over here. I'm so pumped. But Emily has been an inspiration and an encouragement to me since I started following her online. She is the definition of a warrior for sure. And I just can't wait for you to hear her story today. So, Emily, like, to kick it off, just who is Emily? What are some of the fun things about you?
Woo! So, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to finally record this and finally be here with you. Who is Emily? Emily, I want to talk in third person, but I'm not.
Hey, that's cool. Emily talks in third person sometimes.
Yeah. I love coffee. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. Number one city in the world, apparently. You know, I don't know about that, but that's what they say. We got lots of people coming here, which
I love it.
Crazy. But yeah, so I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. I am 23 years old. I was born and raised in Charleston. I run a nonprofit that I founded my freshman year of college at the College of Charleston. It's called Charleston Hope, and we work with our Title I schools here in Charleston, as well as 3 other cities in the country. And so I do that a lot. That's a lot of my time.
Yeah.
I love coffee. Like, I know I already said that, but
We've got our mugs in hand.
Yes, we do. I used to not love it, but I've come around, and now there's kind of always a cup in my hand. So coffee dates, and really just spending time with women. I love investing in them and getting the opportunity to be invested in them. Other than that, I love hanging by the pool, and I love reading. That sums up me.
I knew we were like soul sisters from the second that we met. I love all of the same things. And like you, I always have a coffee cup in hand. Sometimes, like I told you before, I have to put water in it. Hydration. But for the most part, I know. Well, hey, I've had the privilege of hearing your story and following your story. So why don't you just take some time right now and unpack your story? What's made you who you are today?
Yeah, so where to start? It's a long story. Obviously 23 years worth. But so like I said, I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. I grew up in a really sound, faith-based home. My parents, incredible Christians, really led us as we were growing up. Went to church my whole life. Really felt in high school I was starting to develop a relationship with Christ. And but it wasn't really until college that I felt I was really making faith my own. It was a decision, when you get to college, which way are you going to go? Are you going to get into community, Christ-like community, or are you not? It's plain and simple. And so I had made the decision myself that was the path that I wanted to take. So really got plugged in church and community group, and really, really just, I think, fell in love with the Lord. I genuinely just felt like I couldn't get enough. And so I was single at the time, just for months, loving the Lord, loving community. And then one day this incredible guy, I saw him at our church, our college ministry, he had come in, and he just was sold out for Jesus. He came in by himself, which I thought was super unique. He came in just loving Jesus, worshiping. And so I was immediately like, hey, I kind of want to get to know this guy. So long story short, we ended up dating. He really pursued my heart. And for the next 2 years, we really walked in really what it looked like to love. It's crazy because this was actually the saying of our college ministry, but it's so true when I think about it. We really walked in what did it look like to love God and love others. And so we walked in that, him and I, his name was Chad. We went through a lot of difficult stuff, just a lot of growing. I really felt that I was going to marry him. I was so excited. We talked about it a lot. He was someone that I wanted to spend my future with, that I really felt that I was going to. And it was almost our 2-year anniversary. We had talked, like I said, a lot about getting married, and he flew home for Christmas break, and he was at home. And the one morning he was, picking out engagement rings, and with his parents, he was looking at them. And I didn't know this, at the time, of course. But I was supposed to fly up 2 days after that morning that he was looking at rings. And so he went to play basketball that night, and it just was a normal night, text him. I was actually looking at pictures of him and I online on Facebook, just was getting so excited to fly up to Chicago and see him. And so I ended up going to bed and just texting him, we were saying, I love you. And I even texted him, I was like, I'm looking at pictures of you online. Like, you're so cute. I love you so much. Blah, blah, blah. And ended up going to bed, and was kind of like, I put my phone under my pillow because I was waiting, for him to call when he got done playing basketball. And so I got a phone call, and, I just was expecting it, to be him. And it was actually his mom. And so I remember laying there, and I remember thinking, this is kind of weird. I'm like, I wonder if Chad lost his phone and he just got home, and so he's just letting me know he was home. That was literally the thought that, went through my head. And so I ended up trying to call Chad back, and he didn't answer. And so his mom called again. And so I'm thinking, okay, something must be wrong with his phone. So I answer, and it was his mom. And it just, in that moment, it was a moment that at the time I didn't know that, my life was going to be rocked. My world was going to be rocked, and my life was never going to be the same again. And I remember sitting there on the couch, and she just said, Emily, are you home? And I was like, yeah. And she said, okay, you need to sit down. And so I was like, I'm sitting, and, then you hear that. And so my heart's starting to drop. And she just said, Chad fell playing basketball. He hit his head. At the time, she said he had a seizure. And so I can remember literally thinking in that moment, being on the phone with her and just thinking, all right, God, that's okay. Even if he's paralyzed, like, that's okay. We'll make it. Like, I'm not going anywhere. And I'll never forget, just this long drawn out pause. And it's just one of those moments again, where I think literally in my head, it crossed of my life's about to change. And she just said his heart stopped, and they're trying to get it back. But it stopped. And I can remember my knees just hitting the floor, and just, I don't even think I could get anything out. I was numb. I literally crawled from my living room because she was like, you need to go get your parents. So crawled up the living room, screaming for my dad as I'm crawling up the steps. And literally, like, I just throw the phone at him, and my mom, I go into my mom's room, and I start crying, and I just say, Chad had a seizure, his heart stopped. At the time, we didn't know all the details. And so I immediately text my community group. I led a community group, and it was probably like 15 girls. And first thing I did, I just texted them, and I said, pray. Chad's heart has stopped. He fell. We don't know anymore. And so we've got girls are starting to get the word out, praying. And at that point, I was like about to get sick. So I went to the bathroom and sat there and got sick, and then just sat there against the wall. And time was passing. I can remember my family coming in and being in the bathroom around. And then just over time hearing extended family and friends, just pouring in. And I can just remember that period of waiting and just begging my parents. I just was like, pray. And my poor family, they started praying in their heads. And I was like, then I started screaming. I was like, no, pray out loud. Like, everyone pray out loud. So we all started praying out loud. And eventually over time, his sister called and said, or I had called, it just was such a traumatizing time. The story gets all jumbled, but eventually I had to end up calling his sister because just to see what was going on again. I mean, I felt like I was waiting for hours and hours just to hear something. I was getting bits and pieces of calls of they're taking him back to a room. So at that time I'm like, okay, he's going to a room. That's good. My dad's trying to book me a flight because I'm like, I got to be there as soon as possible. And so I remember calling his sister, and his sister said, it's not, she just said, it's not looking good. They're going to try and shock him, one more time. And if they can't, they had been shocking him at this point for 30, 45 minutes. And she just said, if they can't get it, that's it. And so I can remember, it is something I will never forget. And I think about it every day. Just sitting against that wall, I can hear, my family praying and crying and begging for the Lord. But I felt this overwhelming sense of peace. And it was this peace in my head. I genuinely feel like it was the Lord saying, he's okay. Like, he's going to be okay. And, at the time I thought that meant like, he's going to be okay. Like, he's going to live, he's got this, he's a fighter. But, to almost 3 years later, I'm looking back and, I feel like in that moment, I genuinely feel like in that moment was when they stopped shocking him. And the Lord just gave me that peace and said, he's okay. He's home. And so, obviously he ended up passing away at 20 years old. So ended up flying to Chicago the next day. His funeral was there. And then about 3 weeks later, we had a funeral back here in Charleston. And honestly, the time and the months after that, they're a blur. I don't think I've ever walked in, obviously I haven't, but the pain that I felt, and I think oftentimes when we think of pain, or other people's pain, we just think of them, in tears or crying. But no, sometimes it is literally like physical aching. Like my heart and my stomach and my muscle, they just physically ached. I felt, I lost almost 20 pounds. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't go anywhere, without sobbing. So I just walked in a really, a pretty long state of just brokenness, just questioning God, wondering, at the age of 20, like there was no reason. I battled with that a while. They did an autopsy. There was no enlarged heart, no heart disease, literally just nothing. And the only reason that we had was just God called him home. And as comforting as you would think that sounds, I think honestly leads to a lot more questions of why. Like, why him? Why not someone who is making the world not a good place versus someone who genuinely is? So just battled with that. And then I just walked for about 2 years, just living in that brokenness. I started writing as my outlet, sharing my blog. I felt the Lord was calling me at that time. Looking back now, it was a platform that he was going to use. To me at the time, it was just being obedient in being real and incredibly raw on what I was feeling and what I was thinking and going through, and just writing it. And it was an outlet for me. And then I just clicked the publish button and, let it be public. And he used it. And that, looking back now, it's just been incredible, the amount of women and people who have found different meanings through that blog. And so that blog really helped me heal in a lot of ways. But I also just found this sense of the beauty. The blog is called Beautifully Broken. And I just felt, as every time I would hit publish, I felt that I was finding more and more the beauty in being beautifully broken. I think I think just the Lord really, I think he really used that for me. Even 3 years later, of it's become who I am, of I am broken, but it's beautiful, because if I'm not broken and if I'm not weak, then where does the Lord get to be strong? If I've got it all together all the time, and if I'm grieving perfectly and not letting anyone see my faults or my negative thoughts or my distancing myself from the Lord, but working to come back to the Lord and trying to find him in the midst of it all, where does God get any of the credit? And so I thought he was really teaching me that, and ended up really just, I think, becoming really complacent in my healing, and really complacent and comfortable in my grief. That's kind of where the Lord really, really started teaching me is, it is okay to be broken. It is absolutely okay. But it's not okay to stay there, and I was stuck there for a while. It took, I think, looking back again now, it was a wake-up call from the Lord of about 2 years, almost 2 years exactly after Chad had died. So this past December, in December 2016, he died in 2014. And then this past December of 2016, I just was living a lifestyle of, trying to figure out the Lord, but also I was not involved in a really great community. I was going out all the time on the weekends, going to church, really tired, sometimes hungover, just seeking the Lord, but still staying stuck. Even though I desperately knew I wanted that healing, I desperately wanted stronger Christ-like community, and I desperately wanted to heal. I don't think the Lord allows us to not want to heal, because I think that that's who he is. He's healing. And if the Lord is in us, he's not going to allow us not to want or to have that feeling that I need to heal. And so last December, I was out celebrating something. Surprisingly, I actually wasn't out, getting drunk or anything like that. I was having a drink and ended up being drugged through my drink, ended up being taken back to an apartment and sexually assaulted. The Lord's absolute grace, I was able to make it out before anything further had happened past what had already happened. And again, I found myself back in that state of complete brokenness. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and really, again, questioning why. For a while, it was all those other times I had gone out and, with the intention to drink a lot, but the one time I was going out just to have 1 or 2 drinks and go home because I had a flight in the morning, and this happened. I just battled a lot too of what comes along with, being sexually assaulted or raped, the feelings of guilt, of it was your fault. And I battled with that a lot. So I started intense therapy again. But looking back 9 months later, as strange as this sounds, I'm so thankful for that situation. I'm so thankful that the Lord used that situation to completely change my life. After that, I had to make a decision. I think sometimes we build it up so high of how to heal, how to do this, but bottom line, it's a decision. I'm going to choose healing, and I'm going to choose it every single day, no matter what it looks like, or I'm not. And it's okay if every decision doesn't happen, like you don't walk in healing, but making the choice to keep going and to keep walking in it. And so I remember laying there and I said, you know what? I was praying for a word for the year. I hadn't had one yet. It was almost January. And all of a sudden it hit me, and it was like, your word for 2017 is freedom. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like, freedom from what? And the Lord just kept revealing to me over that time of freedom literally from the chains that I was carrying, a lot that a lot of chains that I didn't know I was carrying just yet. Like I said earlier, I was stuck in grief. I was stuck with these beliefs that if I moved forward or if I healed, I didn't love Chad. I got so consumed with what other people would think. Would they think that I don't care about Chad anymore? Would they think I'm just forgot about him? And really, really battled that stuff, really to an extent that maybe a couple people in my life really fully know about. Some seasons of dealing with that so much of, again, not being able to eat or sleep or just having so much anxiety, crying all the time, you know. And I'm so thankful for those few people who the Lord blessed me with to walk through that again with me. And this past eight months, I have learned in a whole new light what freedom looks like. It's literally chains being broken and just being able to step out and walk freely. And at the time I was what does freedom even mean? Like, what do I need freedom from? Oh my gosh. Like, I needed freedom from grief. God doesn't design us to stay in grief. Like, he doesn't. I needed freedom from other people's approval and depending on other people's approval. I needed freedom to, as crazy as this sounds, but to heal. I wasn't finding it, and I was seeking that approval and that affirmation from people to heal. And that's not where it comes from. And so I and then was seeking freedom from this lifestyle I was living, freedom from, being stagnant in my faith and really walking into what the Lord has called me and who he's called me to be. Sorry, I'm a little sick. But so it has just been, and the Lord has blessed me the last 8 months. I ended up going to a new church, was super nervous. Again, I felt the Lord was saying, freedom. You said you were going to walk in freedom, do it. Yeah. And it was like, I don't know a soul here, but I heard the Lord say, Awaken Church is going to be your home. And I was like, And then same thing of getting in community, or they call them A groups, but it's small groups, I didn't want to go by myself, not knowing a soul. But again, it was in my head I told the Lord I was going to walk in freedom. I'm going to walk in it. So I went. I faced that fear and I just went and ended up, this guy, he's from Awaken. He's one of the pastors there, and came into my life right around January. And it's no coincidence that what I walked through and the Lord saying freedom is no longer an option. You either need to walk in it or you're gonna keep sinking. And this guy, his name is Andrew, he came along, and since January, he has walked day in and day out of the grief of Chad, of the grief of the assault, that I lost a lot of identity, I felt like, in the assault. And I really, again, had just created an identity of brokenness. I believe that's all I was ever going to be, was broken. And, it's making that one decision one day to go to church, making that one decision to go to A group has changed my life. The women walking alongside me saying, of me feeling all these feelings of struggling with Andrew and then Chad's death, and, but just straight up spitting truth at me and saying, Andrew, or anything in your life right now is not plan B. That was a hard truth for me to accept. But saying God's plan is God's plan. Nothing in your life is the last resort. It's not second place. It's not second best. It's not plan B. And so I had to walk in that, and that was pretty difficult. But finding freedom in that, this life that I thought was a new life, it's not plan B, it's plan A. And it's all part of becoming who God has created me to be, and letting what I have been through, letting God use that in a way that I never would have been used before had I not walked through the pain and the brokenness that I had. And so Andrew has just been, a blessing. I'd say all the time, he's literally an answered prayer that I didn't even really know I was praying for. I was, in a sense, but, there's a certain type of person, and everyone used to tell me that whoever I would end up with, would be really special to walk through all of the stuff that I had to walk through and really to heal. And he has, he's never questioned me. He's held me while I'm grieving. He has, listened to my stories, but all firmly being rooted, and he knows so well. And by his actions, I learned that nothing in our lives is plan B. And so that just was really special. And then through that, and then through walking with him, and then, like I said, the people at my church and now my community that I have been able to walk through the last 8 months has just been absolutely incredible. Chains have been broken. I have been walking into freedom, but I just love having that word. Last year my word was brave, and this year it's freedom. But I love having that word to focus on that I do feel like was from the Lord, because it makes me so much aware of his presence. It makes me so much more reminded of who he is. And, there's instances where I'll say, this is God's freedom. And it's like, it's incredible. So it's still a tough journey. I still battle with people's approval or wondering what people think of this or that. But bottom line, I have to be rooted back to God loves me. God's plan is God's plan. There's no greater plan than God's plan. Believing Chad is home. He would not even want to come back here. I'm sure of it. I would want to stay with Jesus too. But again, just believing that, God is sovereign and God is good through the pain and through the brokenness. And, I've battled a couple of trials the past 8 months. I just got over meningitis for 5 weeks, again, questioning why all of these trials. But I think the last thing I'll say is, at the end of that, I feel that I have genuinely seen the beauty and the victory of overcoming trials. It's so sweet to be on that other side and to feel that Jesus a lot better, to feel that you are so close to him, that there's no question but his faithfulness. To look back, after Chad died, there were moments where I had pills in my hand, wanting to take them on, not wanting to live anymore. Same after the assault, and with meningitis being in so much physical pain that I thought I could die from the pain, literally. But being on the other end and being like, oh my gosh, this healing, whether it's, physical, mental, or, health-wise, but this healing, there's no other explanation for it except the Lord and his faithfulness of what he just brought me from. There's nothing like it. I just was crying, and so many times I'll be so overwhelmed with that emotion of those emotions of the Lord, of I cannot believe when I deserved nothing, the Lord is blessing me with everything that I need to walk into who he's called me to be and to walk this journey that ultimately I get to spend eternity with him. And so, it's honestly, I feel that I don't like this, but I've started to understand, the passages in James 1 where it says, count it a blessing for those of you who walk through many trials. It's kind of like, at the end when you get to one, it's like, if this is what I get to feel, if I get to see God's faithfulness like this, that I wouldn't get to experience otherwise, it's kind of like, come on, Lord, like just keep them coming. Cause it like that closeness is so, it's unlike anything else. And so I'm still walking in it. I am not perfect in my healing. I wasn't perfect in my grieving. I'm not perfect in, any of this stuff that I'm walking through. And so, but just knowing the victory is on the other side, and the victory has already been won. I just need to choose to walk towards victory, and it's already been promised to me. And then two, just, being okay to be broken, but not staying there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my story. That's kind of where I'm at now, learning. Yeah. I'm learning still.
Well, and we all are. And I mean, thank you for unpacking your story and your journey and inviting us along the process. Earlier when I said that you are the definition of a warrior, something I like to say a lot is like, lace up your warrior boots, choose to be who God made you to be. And that's the posture that you're living in. You're just taking each step that's in front of you, not claiming to have all the answers or be perfect, because none of us ever will be. And so I just love how you pointed us to every trial that comes, we can overcome it because God is good and he can be trusted. And I'm so encouraged and inspired by you and your story. And, if you were sitting at your favorite coffee shop in Charleston, hanging out with another woman and you guys are chatting, what would you say to encourage her on her own becoming journey?
A lot. I won't say too much. I think the top things I would say is, I think one, I would genuinely ask, on this journey through the trials, I love that saying that we're either coming out of a trial, walking in a trial, or we're about to be in one. But I think the first thing I would ask, is, I love asking this to my friends of, how is your relationship with God? No matter what stage you're in, you've got to be rooted. You've got to be preparing for whatever the Lord is, whatever the path the Lord has for you. It's not too late to start when you're in the midst of trial, but it's a lot better to be prepared to walk into battle. Yeah. And so I would ask that, how are you with the Lord? Are you seeking him? Are you preparing for the battles and the victories because I think when you're prepared for battle, you're a lot more likely to give the glory back to God in the victory.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that, and then the other thing I think is just so important to know is what I've said earlier of, it's okay to be broken. Like you just said, it's okay to not be perfect, to not have it all together. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to hurt. One, and then two, it's also okay to feel your feelings. That's one thing that I always try to do I didn't want to push it to the side. So it's okay to be broken. It's okay to feel the pain. God doesn't belittle any pain or suffering that you're in. He feels it with you. But knowing all of that, knowing that it is okay, and the Lord says it's okay. And I think of Jesus, in the garden right before he was about to be crucified, he was grieving like what was about to come. He asked God if there was any other way, but he said, but your will be done, and that's just like you said, just the posture we have to take of, through the trials and through the pain, it's okay to hurt and to cry, but Jesus didn't stay there. He could have stayed there, but no, he got up and walked to the place that the Lord was calling him to, walked into being who God said he was going to be. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we get to do. And then, so just knowing that your pain is valid, it's okay. We're not created not to hurt and not to ache, but it's not okay to stay there. And that was a hard truth and a hard obstacle, the hard belief that I had to overcome and had to grasp of, and then with that of, it's a choice. It's a choice. Like I said, and I wish part of me that I had made the choice sooner, would have saved myself, I think, a lot of different heartaches or a lot of different other things that I had to walk through. But I made the choice when I needed to make, when I didn't have any other one. So just knowing that it's a choice, and I'd say that very lightly because the choice is hard. So knowing that when you choose to walk in freedom, Satan does not want that. Battles are going to come. He's going to fill your head. He's going to fight against that. So knowing when you make the choice to heal, that it's the best and most beautiful one, but know that it's a battle. It's going to keep being a battle because, and that's just all about, becoming who you're going to be, walking in to every day, lacing up your boots and literally saying, you know what, I'm going into battle today, but I know that victory is on the other side. And just believing there's nothing sweeter, there's nothing better, joy really does come in the morning. And so just, embrace all that God has you walking through. Just keep seeking him and keep making those choices every single day. Even if you fall, pick yourself back up and just keep walking to the victory that God has already placed over you. In Genesis, he says, I will bring you back to this land that I have promised you. I will not leave you. But I've been carrying that verse for 2 years, tears and tears, but reading it out loud, like God saying, I will bring you back to this land. And I feel that I am back to that land, almost 3 years later, I'm back to myself and a new version that God has created me to be. And so I would say a lot, but that's the gist of what I would say.
It. Girl, I'm like ready to lace up my boots and go into battle right now. That's an awesome battle cry. And I'm so encouraged by you. Thank you for being so transparent, for being raw, sharing the really hard parts, and how you've had to lean into the hard parts and really fight for freedom and choose it. I know that's something I needed to hear, we needed to hear. So thank you for sharing your story. And for all of you watching, we're going to have the links to Charleston Hope, to Emily's blog, so you can follow her on the journey. You can send her just a word of encouragement too, thank her for sharing her story, and then just continue to be encouraged by her the way that I am. So Emily, thank you for sharing your story. You're amazing.
So are you. Doing what the Lord has called you to do. It's a beautiful thing. Giving people a platform to share.
Thank you.
We are all very blessed by you.
So I appreciate you, girl.